What is the dumbest thing you did because you were hot and bothered? Story 1. I got on with someone after not sleeping the previous night, not having enough water or eating anything the entire day, and fainted right after. I was incredibly stressed and focused on work all night and day before she got to my apartment. We had originally planned to get me some food and water first, but somehow I ended up talking in depth about our weird, ambiguous relationship and our feelings, which got really emotional. That led to the bedroom. Despite my exhaustion, I found a hidden well of energy within myself. It was truly great, much better than I expected, given my state. But afterward, when she was actually going to order food, I went to the bathroom to wash up and suddenly realized I felt nauseous. No matter how hungry I had been a moment prior, the thought of eating was now repulsive, unthinkable. I became very hot, started sweating, and felt weak and shaky. I tried to leave the bathroom and called out to her for help. I woke up on the bathroom floor 15 seconds later by her count. I apparently collapsed and briefly lost consciousness. She claimed she tried to catch me but couldn't reach me in time. I'm lucky I didn't seriously injure myself on one of the hard edges in there. Just hurt my shoulder a little. Dude got sucked dry like a Capri Sun. He learned the hard way not to go wild after a burnout. Story 2. I went all in. I tend to seek out more adventurous types of girls for a bit of excitement in my life. It's been this way ever since, so I probably have some issues of my own. But the experience was so messed up that I vowed to steer clear of crazy girls. The intimacy was amazing, but that's probably what got me into this trouble. I've learned my lesson now. Over the course of 6 hours, she told a homeless man to harm himself, screamed out of my car window, claiming she was kidnapped, urged people to call emergency services, and tried to jump out of my car while I was driving 80 kilometers per hour on the freeway back to her place. It damaged my car by opening the door while we were still moving. Eventually, her mom came over to my place. I dropped her off at her mom's house where she was staying. The girl had a mark on her neck because when she tried to jump out of the car, I must have accidentally grabbed her by the necklace, which actually saved her, by the way, since I was going 80 on a highway. She told her mom I had hurt her, and her mom started throwing punches at me right at my doorstep. Then the girl ran down the driveway with her phone out, yelling, "Hey, I have you on camera hurting my mother." The mother was a lot smaller than I was, so I simply blocked her swings, and I probably held her wrists at some point to prevent her from attacking me. All of this took place at my front door, so I wasn't concerned about what would happen with the footage. Who charges someone at their own front door? Anyway, I was quite shaken up after that night. I couldn't believe it. I've encountered some unpredictable and mentally unstable people before, but this was on a whole different level. It felt like pure evil. I'm still not over it, and it's been about a month now. So yeah, dealing with someone unstable is definitely not worth it. Update, she recently went on trial for plunging a weapon into a man and doing nasty things to him with a broom. All of this occurred before we even met. I feel like I somehow managed to dodge a bullet here. Holy crap. Story 3. Around 8 years back, I lived in northern Mozambique, a coastal southern African country with quite a warm climate. My mother at the time was going through a health nut phase. I'd only bought foods she deemed healthy enough. One of these was coconuts. She would buy several coconuts a week from the local market to use in cooking food, so as a wild adolescent I did dirty stuff while home alone. But with some seriously stressful exams on the horizon, my usual hot skyrocketed, and I ended up feeling severely frustrated. One day I found out my mom would be out for most of the afternoon. Feeling really frisky, I thought it'd be a brilliant idea to butter up a coconut. Looking back, I still can't understand why I thought it was a good plan, but clearly, my thinking at the time was a bit muddled. I used the coconut drill and, after about 20 minutes of effort, managed to make a hole big enough. I thought it needed some oiling up, so I grabbed the nearest slippery thing, which happened to be butter. After putting it into the coconut, I followed. It was surprisingly great. I stashed the coconut under my bed and carried on with my day. For the next week, the coconut is my savior. Whenever I feel the need, I simply take it out and do my thing, made better each time. Now, before I continue, I'll mention that at the time, our area was experiencing quite humid, muggy weather, which worsened an existing fly problem that were commonly found around our house, and the exterminators couldn't really do anything because it was a localized area problem that would go away in the winter. About a week and a bit after the initial coconut boom thing, I'd been using the same thing pretty much every day since then. I started to notice a few more flies than usual, along with an odd and unpleasant smell in my room. Must be the coconut, right? So I decided that I'd do one more round before I throw it out and get a new one. That was the worst mistake I've ever made. You see, the reason for the increased number of flies was the coconut was evidently, in hindsight, a nearly perfect place to lay eggs. One last time I began to feel a strange wriggling sensation. Puzzled, I discovered that it was covered in moldy real butter, and was teeming with tiny critters. I screamed and threw the coconut against the wall, which made the situation worse. Hours of vigorous scrubbing, barfing, and cleaning the remnants were spent reflecting on what the hell I was doing with my life. Never again. Never again. They gave me the ick. Never thought I'd hear someone going completely nuts with a coconut. If you feel lost in the sauce with this one, then hang on tight for Story 7. You won't believe what happened to the guy there. Story 4. I drove from Kentucky to Illinois to meet an AOL girl I connected with virtually. I ended up sleeping in the back of my pickup truck in front of her house, not considering how her parents might react to that creepy stuff. with whom. We met at a station on the outskirts of a suburb. I got into his car and he took me to a parking lot close to the airport. We bumped uglies in the back where he had folded down his back seat, and afterward, he drove me back to the main train station. I bought new undies, used the restroom to change, freshened up, and then caught the train back, arriving at church in time for rehearsal with my church choir. I don't know his name or anything. I wouldn't recognize him in the lineup. It was extremely risky, I realized. I could have been abducted or worse. Story 9. I got a bit handsy with this incredibly attractive girl, with her permission, of course, whom I really wanted to fool around with. It started with feeling, and then afterward, I took a peek down to see them. I hadn't seen much at that point. The problem? It was in the middle of high school, right in the middle of the hall with everyone around, including teachers. We managed not to get caught, but we came really close. I was a bit of an idiot for not asking her if we could go somewhere more private. I was just so desperate to see her that I didn't even consider the consequences. I then went to the bathroom because I couldn't get lucky with her. Truthfully, she wouldn't have wanted it anyway. She let me see her goodies, but she didn't want to do it with me. Story 10. When I was young, my dad often took me to his job and gave me small tasks to help him out. It was a property manager for a secure government building with federal guards at the doors, etc. His office was in the basement, and he'd left alone there by everyone else, smoking and blasting music. So one day in middle school, I accompanied him to work, and he assigned me the task of using an electric sander to clean grime off copper pipes in one of the machine rooms. I was left alone to work for hours, and about an hour in, I realized how incredibly powerful the vibrations from the sander were. One thing led to another, and I ended up using the sander's handle. Afterwards, I remember thinking to myself, you're a really weird dude. Never told anyone until now. This guy was basically multitasking there, cleaning 2 pipes at the same time. Story 11. I decided to poach eggs in a urinal because I was bored and feeling a bit playful while studying for finals back in college. I used to study in an empty classroom within the creepiest old building on campus to stay completely focused and avoid distractions. After not seeing anybody around in that building for 3 hours, I didn't bother locking the bathroom door or using a stall like most people would. So I'm going about my business when suddenly the bathroom door swings open, catching me off guard. I froze, holding my egg beater for a moment, then quickly tucked it away and left without making eye contact. I still have no clue who that person was, but they sure knew what I was doing and thought I was freaking weird. Story 12. Many years ago, my current wife and I were quite mischievous. We used to sneak around under this highway underpass a bit off the road because our parents were always home. Well, it was also near a community center type building. One day as we were walking through the woods to get there, someone thought they saw a man. My wife has always been very short. Yes, it was me. We're the same age, just have a crazy height difference, and I've had a beard from a young age. Lol. Anyway, long story short, I was getting a knob job. The cop came down to the underpass from the highway up above and yelled, "Freeze!" Let me tell you, we both froze. She wouldn't move and had her face covered while in the middle of things. Then the cop just yelled at us saying, "Can't you guys be doing this at home?" Mentioned he could see I wasn't a minor and informed us about the call. It was the most embarrassing thing to ever happen. We didn't even bring it up again for a few years. Now we're married and it's a funny memory. We even went back there to fool around a year ago. Story 13. I once walked 3 miles at 2 a.m. during a snowstorm in a negative 3-degree temperature, plus a serious wind chill, when my girlfriend called and said that her parents were gone for the weekend, and I paid for some chick's private Snapchat for a week. It was $20 wasted. I should have ordered a pizza instead. The things a raunchy kid will do to get lucky. Lol. Pizza beats frostbitten willies any day. No cap. Story 14. I spent $2 on a message app for my Xbox that was supposed to make my controller vibrate. Disappointingly, it didn't work for me, and I forgot to refund it. Now I just have this random message game sitting in my library. However, a friend later told me that true gamers find ways to make games trigger the controller vibrations. For instance, in Star Wars BF2 on the PS2, using the clone commander with the infinite ammo cheat and an elastic band to hold down the fire button could make it vibrate indefinitely. It dawned on me that you could achieve that effect in quite a few games. Story 15. Several years back, a woman I had been flirting with called me in the middle of the night because she wasn't feeling well and asked if I could pick up some medicine and bring it to her place. I went to her place, not expecting too much other than maybe earning some brownie points for dropping off the meds. Anyway, she invited me in and asked if I could spend the night with her. That, of course, got me all excited. However, by the time we got into bed, she was all tired and drowsy despite her best attempt at being endearing. Next thing I knew, I was lying in bed next to her with my arms pinned under her body while she was snoring away and farting. I ended up lying like that for the rest of the night. Got maybe 30 minutes of sleep that entire night, and of course, I then had to get up to work a whole shift in the morning. At least I did earn some brownie points for that because we ended up dating for not quite a year afterward. Story 16. I paid $1,200 for a private room at Hustler in Vegas, threw the exotic dancer as a wild card and said, "Y'all sit down while I dance for you." Now I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? The memory of the night is quite hazy. I recall choosing the bottle of Maker's Mark that we all shared. They offered double trouble. I proceeded to dance to that Drake song, In My Feelings, and about 4 minutes later I found myself in the buff, surrounded by exotic dancers doing their thing. Beyond that, I'm not entirely sure what else happened. I even tried Googling to see if anyone else had a similar experience. I'll never forget what fragments of that night I can recall. I went back upstairs to meet with my buddies, only to discover they had ditched me and returned to the Luxor. Apparently, I had been down there for 3 hours. What on earth did I do during that time? I guess I'll never know. Story 17. I had it so bad for this Chinese girl at university back in 2004, and she wouldn't give me the time of day no matter what I did. Then, in a moment of insane desperation while browsing the early days of the internet, I stumbled upon some self-proclaimed wizard living in California who claimed expertise in love spells. I can't believe it myself, but my 20-year-old brain thought it was a good idea to send that wizard $200 to cast the spell. Needless to say, the spell didn't work. To this day, I still can't believe how stupid I was. Male hormones are ridiculous things. Bro was probably a Harry Potter fan. He thought that the love spell would make the girl open her griffin door so he could slither in. No, that joke is overused, but it's the only one I could think of. Story 18. I dyed my hair black. My roommate was in the process, and the girl assisting him was stunningly attractive. She walked into the living room and suggested, "We have some extra dye. I think black hair would suit you really well." I glanced at her, clad in that lime green tube top, and replied, "That sounds like an awesome idea." I discovered I was allergic to hair dye 3 days later when my head swelled up, resembling the orc general who attacked Minas Tirith in Return of the King, except for the full head of Elvis black hair. It took a month of medication for the reaction to subside. Underneath the hair, my head was bright red and perspiring, something that made my hair hard as a rock. The joys of allergic reactions. Story 19. I used some heated lotion like icy hot and ended up getting badly burned for days. I also tried it in the bath once without much thought, just being a dumb kid. Afterward, it stuck to my whole body and was crusty like an old gym sock. To top it off, I wore a shirt to school, not realizing my baby sauce was all over it. That actually happened twice. I was a young and dirty guy, I guess. Story 20. I drove 4 hours to the beach to camp with my FWB, only to be stood up and completely ghosted. To top it off, I lost my keys in the sand, resulting in a hefty $300 bill for a new set. Yes, the new key actually cost that much. It was for a 16 Jeep, and those tiny chips are crucial for starting the engine. The cost covered the key itself, its programming, and the locksmith's labor. I lost them across about a mile, so I'm unsure how useful a metal detector would have been. But hey, I wouldn't have minded trying one if I had it handy. Getting ghosted and losing your keys? This guy was so close to replacing Bad Luck Brian. Thanks for sticking around. If you like my stories about people getting their freak on, check out What's the Craziest Thing Happened to You in Truth or Dare? Story 3 was gas. See you there.